Alright, hey guys, let's do our notes for slope. So we went over class yesterday. We talked about slope kind of as like a story, and we kind of went through everything we had to do. Today, let's actually put these notes on paper for us, okay? So, slope, exclamation right there. So it says the steepness of a line is called, hey, guess what? It's called slope. Okay? Now, when we talk about, it says here to circle the line with the greatest slope. And the way you want to figure that out is when you look at these lines, if we think about putting a marble on them, which one would make the marble roll off faster? So you're looking for the one with the greatest slope, or which one is most steep. Okay, so this one is the steepest. Okay. Now the next thing we have is it says the letter we use for slope is a lowercase, and the letter we use is M. Okay. Now the question is why? Well, why is because it comes from a French word, which is monter, which means to climb or to rise. Okay, that's a fun fact. Okay, very fun. For me, I kind of remember it a different way. I use that Mako shark that we talked about yesterday. That M is the M for Mako, and I'm using shark in my mind just because I know slope drives everything that we do when it comes to linear equations. I mean, it's going to tell the line which way it needs to go, how steep it needs to be. So for the most part, slope is that shark of linear equations that really kind of helps it. Okay. Now, when given a graph of a line, we need to know a simple definition of slope. And I gave this to you guys yesterday. We look at this and we call it rise over run. So the next piece of it is slope is the ratio of a line's vertical change to its horizontal change. And that's what we mean by rise over run. Now, another way to think of this is we think of it as the change in y, which this little triangle is a delta symbol, which means change in y, which is our vertical, over the change, or this delta, this little triangle, in our horizontal, which is our x-coordinates. Okay? So change in y over change in x, same thing as our rise over run. Alright, so the question is, how do we find slope of a line when given the graph of the line? So the first thing we want to do is number one here. It says start at the point farthest to the left. Now, it says to find rise, we're looking at the y-axis, and if I have to go up, then that's going to make it positive. And if I need to go down, it would be negative. When I'm having to find the run, or I'm looking at the x-axis, then if I go to the right, it would be positive. And if I have to go left, it would be negative. Alright, so let's look at this example to the right over here. Okay. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to find two really good points. Okay, and the 2 points should cross. It should cross at the crosshairs on the graph. Okay. So for us, our 2 good points that we're going to use is we are going to use, let me see here. Oh my gosh. We are going to use, alright, let's use this -2 here, and we're also going to use, and we'll use this point right here. Alright guys, so what I was saying is you want to use 2 really good points, and unfortunately this graph that I have in the notes here is not the best. Okay, so we're going to redraw this line to kind of help us a little bit. So the line I want to draw is, I'm going to put it through these 2 points right here, so you can kind of ignore the one or you can redraw your line. But here's my line that we're going to use. Okay, I want to find 2 good points. And when you look at the other graphs, you'll probably see better points on them. You should, and if you don't, I'll make better graphs for you. But here's a good point. It is crossing at the crosshairs, and that's what you're looking for, is for the points to cross at the crosshairs. Now, I'm going to go up in this case. I want to go to the farthest point on the left, which is here, and I'm going to go up as far as I need to match the other good point, okay? So here I'm going to go up, and I'm going to go up 2 points, and then I'm going to go to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm actually going over this extra point right here, okay? Now, in this line, my rise in this case is 2, and my run is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we said, okay? So my slope in this case, remember we said it's rise over run, so it's going to be 2 over 5. So that's my slope for this line right here. What you guys have is we're going to look at the graphs down here at the bottom, and you guys are going to practice this for me. I'm going to do the first one with you guys, or I'll do it for you guys or with you guys. So with this one, we want to find the best 2 points to use. And when I'm looking at this, it looks like one of the best points to use is going to be right here at 0, -1. And the other point that's really good to use is going to be over here at -4, 2. So this one's right here. Now we want to draw our right triangle to kind of draw this out for us. So I'm going to go down, and then I'm going to go to the right. So now what I want to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to count my rise. Now, since I'm going down in this case, my rise is going to be negative. So we have 1, 2, 3. So in here I have a -3 for my numerator for the change in y. And when I go to the right now, this will be positive. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going over 4. So my slope in this case is -3 over 4. Now, here's kind of a tip that I just wanted to talk about really quickly. I know I have these notes up here for you saying, hey, up positive, down negative, and it's trying to help you figure out if it's positive or negative. But yesterday when we did the sharking class and we kind of went around the shark talking about the lines on it and saying, hey, which ones were positive, which ones were negative, the nice thing is you don't really need to decide, am I going up or down, and how to make the positive. You can look at these graphs and automatically tell if it's going to be a positive slope or negative. So when I look at this slope right here, this line, as I go down the x-axis, my y value, my y coordinate is decreasing. So this is going down as a negative slope. It's decreasing. So if you have a decreasing slope, it's negative. If I have an increasing slope, it's going to be considered positive. So when I look at this line going up here, as I go down the x-axis, my y-coordinates are getting larger. So you would say this has a positive slope. So I definitely know this one's positive. When I look at the next graph here, same thing. I'm going down the x-axis, and as I look at my y-coordinates, the ones that are being plotted on the line, they're getting larger. It's going up. So this one has a positive slope. And then the last one here, as I go down the x-axis, my x-coordinate's increasing, but my y-coordinate is decreasing, so this one has a negative slope. So you guys should be able to look at a graph right off and automatically know, hey, is it going to be positive, negative, and then in addition to that, we can look at other ones that are maybe undefined or 0. So now what I would like you to do is you're going to go through and you're going to find the slope for these other 3 graphs, and then we'll come back and check your answer. Alright, so you guys, we should have paused the video, and right now you guys hopefully have solved these 3 problems. So we're going to go through them now and check your answers. Okay. So again, the first thing we want to do is we want to go in and we want to find 2 really good points for us. Okay. So the 2 points that we want to use is we're going to use this -2, 2, or -2, -2, and then we're also going to use -1, 3. Now I know in this graph it's a little off. The graphs I give you next week when we take a quiz on this, it's going to be a lot better, right? So I'll make sure that the line goes through it. It's just for these notes, for whatever, I'm not sure why they got skewed a little bit. So here, since these are our 2 good points, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to the point that's the farthest left, and we're going to draw our right triangle. So here I'm going up, and then I'm going to go over to that point, and now we need to count our rise. So I'm going up. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my numerator is 5, and my denominator in this case is I'm just going over 1, so it's 1. So my slope in this case is a positive 5. And you can get the positive from either knowing that you're going up and then you're going over, so both of these directions are positive, or if you just want to look at the graph, you can see that this one is a positive slope. It is going up, so your answer should be positive. Alright, on the next one, again, let's find our two good points. So I'm going to use -3, 1, and then I'm also going to use 1, 3. So here are my two good points. So we're going to start at the farthest left. I'm going to go up, and then I'm going to go over. And let's count. So my rise in this case, I'm going up 2, and my denominator for my x, my change in x, I'm going over 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I have a fraction 2/4, and then from here this will simplify, and you should simplify this and then tell me that the slope is 1/2, and it's definitely positive 1/2. I did go up, which is positive, and to the right, which is also positive, but I can look at this line here and I can see that it's a positive slope. Alright, the last one here. Let's find our two good points. Alright, so one of my good ones is this -2, 0, and my other one that I have is going to be -3, 4. So that's my other good point. So from here, we'll draw our right triangle. And as I look at this, I'm going to go up. My rise in this case is 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 is my numerator, and my denominator in this case is 1. But let's kind of look at this. So when I'm doing this, I really should have gone to the farthest left point here. And as I'm counting down, I'm going down, so my numerator in this case should be negative. And then as I go across, I can see that I'm going to the right, which is positive. So I have a positive in the denominator. Now, my answer here should be -4, but hopefully you'll get the negative either by paying attention to which direction you're going and counting, or you can just look at the graph and see that I have a negative slope, so my slope has to be negative here. It's decreasing, so it's negative. Alright, so I'm going to pause the video now. Alright, so now we're going to go to the back and take our notes on the back of this. And when we flip it over, we are going to start looking at horizontal and vertical lines. So remember when we did Slope Guy, and Slope Guy, he's kind of staring at you at the back of the room on the vocabulary wall back there. So remember when we talk about Slope Guy, if we kind of draw his face really quickly here, we have our two eyes. If it's positive for one eye, it's going up, it's increasing. If I have a negative eye, it's going down. Now, when we talk about a horizontal line, we said that this was his mouth, and then he's got his two dimples on the side here, but the dimples are the zeros. So whenever you have a horizontal line, we know that the slope of this line is 0, okay? If I put a marble on this, it's not going to go anywhere, it would just stay there. So there's no slope to this line. Or the slope we would say is 0 in this case. Okay. Now, when we look at the vertical line in this case, we can see that we had his nose that we drew last, and we put this kind of U underneath his nose. Okay, very silly looking face there. Okay, for our slope guy. Now, when we have a vertical line, if you think about the definition of slope, we know that slope is equal to our rise over our run. Now, if I look at this, especially if I look at the run in this case, there is no run. The run is 0, okay? And the other day, we went in and we kind of used Siri just to kind of joke around. We asked Siri to divide 0 by 0. And we know that if we try to divide 0 by 0, that we can't do that. That's one thing in math that you are not allowed to do, okay? We say friends don't let friends divide by 0. So if we do that, we know that we will get what we would say is a slope in this case that is undefined. So for a horizontal line, we know the slope is 0. For a vertical line, we know that the slope is considered it's undefined. And the reason it's undefined is because the run in this case, or the change in our x value, is 0. And because of the definition, we can't divide by 0. So that's why our slope is 0 in this case. Alright, so now what do we do if we have, it says here, sometimes we are not given a picture, but instead we are given 2 points on the line. When this is the case, we must implement another definition of slope. So our other definition of slope is, we did say that slope is rise over run. That was our first definition. And then we also said, hey, it's our change in y over change in x. Now, our final definition, the other definition that we can use, is where we would say y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And then our notes over here on the right here say, in other words, slope is the change in y divided by the change in x. And this is where I like to use my little delta symbol to describe change. Okay. So now let's go through an example that we have. So how to find slope of a line when given 2 points on the line. So here's my 2 points. Now with the formula that we're using, we are using y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now it doesn't matter which points I decide to call x1, y1, x2, y2. It can be either. But once we decide, we've got to stick to it. Okay, so I'm going to choose this first point, and I'm just choosing it randomly. I'm going to say this is my x2 and this is my y2. Now the 2 down here is just a subscript so that we can identify these x coordinates and y coordinates. It is not a square. We are not putting it into a calculator and doing anything on it. It's just kind of helping us to identify it. Now the next one is negative 2, 3, and I'm going to call this one my x1 and this other one my y1. So now that we've identified our coordinates, we can take these points and just plug them into the equation and simplify it, or into this formula and simplify it. So let's go and do that now. So y2 I said was 7, so 7, minus my y1, which in this case is 3. And now we're going to divide this by x2, which we decided was 1. And I'm going to subtract x1, which in this case is a negative 2. So I'm going to subtract, and I like to use parentheses to say subtract negative 2. Now the numerator is pretty simple to solve for, right? We just have 7 minus 3, which we're going to get 4 in this case. And I'm going to divide this. Now this is where we need to be kind of careful. Okay? Whenever I have 1 minus, and I'm subtracting a negative number, you need to think of this as basically negative and a negative, right? So anytime I have 2 negatives, it's going to turn it into positive. So this is really 1 plus 2, so my denominator here is going to be 3. So my slope in this case is going to be 4/3. And the reason I chose my points like this is because I really wanted to point that out to you. And the one on the next here, on the next where it says important, this is very important. So whenever subtracting a negative really means addition. Okay, so we want to make sure we do that. Now what you're going to do for me is you're going to go through and you are going to solve. You have 4 problems here, and you want to go in, identify your variables, decide which ones you're going to call x1, y1, x2, y2, and then you will solve these 4 problems for me, okay? Now I'm going to pause the video so you guys can solve it, and then we'll come back and check it in a minute. Or a couple of minutes. We'll see how long it takes. Alright, so let's go through and solve these problems now, and we'll see how you guys did. So for the very first one, again, we want to go in and decide what's our x1, y1, and we'll go through and solve this. So I'm going to choose, this is my x2, this is my y2, this is x1, and this is y1. And as we go through and solve these now, I'm just going to use the formula and we're going to plug it in. So to kind of remember, our formula is this right here. So it's just y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So here we go. So my y2 in this case is negative 1 minus 2 divided by my x2, which is 6, minus 4, which is my x1. So when we simplify this, if I have a negative 1 and I'm subtracting 2, we're going to end up with negative 3. When I have 6, a positive 6, and I'm subtracting 4, we're going to end up with a positive 2. So my answer in this case is just negative 3/2. That is what my slope equals. Okay. All right. The next problem. Let's look at it. Alright, let's solve the next problem. So same thing, you want to go in and identify your points. So I don't know why I do this, but maybe if you want to do x1 and y1, you can. It doesn't matter. I like to do x2 and then y2, and then I'm going to do x1 and y1. Okay? And then from here, we'll put them into our formula again. Okay? So it's going to be 3 minus, in this case, a negative 2, which makes it positive. And then in my denominator, I'm going to have my 4 minus 3. So we're going to go through and simplify this. So 3 minus this is positive, so this is going to equal positive 5. And then I'm going to divide this by 4 minus 3, which is 1. So my slope in this case is just equal to 5. And it's a positive 5. Alright, the next problem. Look at it. Out of the way. So for the next problem here, again, I'm going to use this as my x2, y2. I'm going to use this as x1, y1. And let's go through and solve this. So we're going to take 7 minus 1 divided by negative 1 minus a negative 3. So my numerator in this case is going to turn out to be 6. When I have a negative 1, and then I have a negative and a negative, that turns this positive. So this is really 1 minus, or 1 plus 3, a negative 1 plus 3. So that's going to end up being a positive 2. So this is going to simplify. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So my slope for this one is 3. Alright, now the last problem here, same problem. We're going to go through our same situation. x2, y2, x1, y1. And we'll go through and solve this. So 4 minus 5 divided by 3 minus 6 equals 4 minus 5 gives me a negative 1. 3 minus 6 is going to give me a negative 3. Now if I have a negative 1 over a negative 3, turns it positive, so my answer for this case, my slope is just 1/3. Alright, so now the next thing I want you to try is we're going to go down here, and now that you guys know how to find slope using the formula, now we can go in and have you guys try to solve for slope, but you're not actually going to solve for slope, you're going to solve for the missing value. So for problem number 1, or this problem right here, I guess it's not problem 1, we would go in and we're going to put this into the equation. I'm giving you the slope, I'm giving you 2 points, but in one of the points I'm putting a variable, and I need you to solve for this variable y. So let's use the formula. We know that slope equals, so this is going to be negative 8 equals, and we've got to decide which one you're going to do, y2 and y1, but I'm going to use this as my y2, so this is going to be y minus 1 divided by my x2, which is going to be 0, minus a negative 2. And now we can go through and solve this. So I'm going to pause the video for a minute while you guys are working on it. Alright, so I had the video pause for a little bit. Let's see how you guys did on this. So when we go through and solve this, let's kind of simplify it a little bit more. So I have negative 8 equals y divided by 1, or y minus 1 divided by, and this is going to give me a positive 2. Now, if I want to solve this equation, the cool thing is that pops into my mind is I could go through here, I could clear the fraction by multiplying it by 2, or I can turn the negative 8 over 1 into a fraction. And now I have 2 fractions equal to each other, and we can simplify this by using cross multiplication. So let's do that. So if I have negative 8 times 2, that gives me a negative 16 equals, and if I have 1 times y minus 1, well, that's just y minus 1. And now we can go in and solve this for y. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides, add 1, and we're going to end up with y equals negative 15. And that is my final answer. Alright, you guys solve this last one, and then we're done.